Sister cut ties with her best friend right after her wedding. And turns out, the reason was the lie sister fed us, and her husband. So she was served divorce papers. Ruby, 30 female, and my sister Anne, 29 female, had been close friends for as long as I, 25 female, can remember. So Ruby was like a second big sister to me when I was a child. Not to be overlooked is the fact that Ruby has always had the most outlandish sense of style. She is the one who would dress in those designer clothes from the runway that you would think no one would ever wear. Before COVID, Anne got engaged. She began acting pretty strangely toward Ruby almost immediately after it occurred. Although they had always promised to be each other's maids of honor at weddings, I was a little taken aback when she named me maid of honor. However, since I am her biological sister, it wasn't too strange. But when she created a group chat and I discovered that Ruby wasn't even a bridesmaid, I was astounded. My mother and I tried to talk to her about it because we thought they were having a fight or something, but all she would say was that Ruby didn't give a damn. Ruby didn't want any drama. So even though I knew she was hurt, I decided to let it go. My mother questioned Anne frequently during the planning of the wedding, asking if Anne would invite Ruby, get her opinion, etc. But Anne wouldn't communicate with her or discuss anything wedding related with her at all. My sister got married on Saturday. Her wedding was a lovely, socially isolated outdoor event, but Ruby's outfit kept her from seeing clearly the entire time. Ruby wouldn't have thought it outrageous in the slightest, so I don't think she was trying to outdo my sister. She made the decision to wear a really straightforward wedding gown. Naturally, I attended her fitting as MOH, and that was the exact one she selected. After all, I just explained that Anne has been friends with Ruby for the most of her life, that she knows what Ruby wears and that she should have expected this. Anne has been cussing Ruby out and declaring that their friendship is ended ever then, as if she hadn't been ignoring her during a lockdown. She ought to have either made her a bridesmaid or found a way to bring it up with her if it was really that big of an issue. With me, Anne lost it. After Ruby yelled at me, she sent some extremely awful messages. She didn't say anything to me at all yesterday, but she is now disparaging me to our pro-her dad father. Anne isn't speaking to Ruby anymore because my mother informed her that she had to apologize to Ruby for the offensive messages she sent and for yelling at me. Ruby claims with all her might that they never argued or experienced anything before COVID. I have no idea what the heck is going on. Anne thinks that I should be helping my real sister and it's none of my concern. I don't know. Am I the idiot? My dad seems to agree with her and she's turned the other bridesmaids against me. Relevant comment before OOP started editing the post. As I read your post, I hear yakety sax. Was there a massive tent with red and white stripes over the wedding site? Were there jugglers and elephants present? Anne has the voice of the shit show's ringmaster. The obvious solution in this case would have been for Anne to make Ruby a bridesmaid or a mother of honor, at which point she could have actually dictated the attire. It is not good for Anne's marriage that she is fuming over a fictitious dressgate during what should be one of her best moments. With all of this, where is the groom? If the honeymoon looks like this. OP responds, it's a groom, so I suppose we can call him Dave. He's essentially keeping out of it, which is why I didn't mention anything. Since Ruby and Anne used to be so close, he has had several encounters with Ruby. Yet given that Anne is his wife, it goes without saying that he would not support Ruby. That's all. I'm sure he's tired of hearing her babble on about it by now. Info. Do you think it's possible there's a lot more going on behind the scenes? Inquires a four-sided commenter. Very possible, OOP responds. I reasoned that there had to have been a disagreement for the friendship to dissolve so quickly, but Anne would become upset if I brought it up, so I gave up on her. When I contacted Ruby to inquire, she claimed that nothing had occurred. If they got into a fight, they're not discussing it. OOP explains the suddenness of Anne's breakup with Ruby in another comment. My sister and Ruby were best friends basically up until the engagement, and then Anne suddenly broke up with her right away. The relationship was never tense, rather it abruptly ended. She looked fantastic wearing the glitzy dress. Even though Ruby's regular style was toned down with much more modest accessories, etc., it still fit. She simply appeared to be a well-groomed and lovely guest, not at all out of place. Ruby wasn't attempting to outdo her or anything, but my sister is certainly aware of Ruby's basic sense of style. Even if she didn't want Ruby to be a bridesmaid for whatever reason, I believe that if it was going to be this big of a problem, she ought to have brought it up to Ruby rather than ignoring her for 6 months. OOP goes on to edit the first post. To be clear about a few things, Ruby didn't have on a bridal gown or anything incredibly showy. It was a satiny bodycon dress in a rich red color. She didn't look out of place despite the large number of individuals wearing form-fitting dresses. The bridesmaids were wearing them. Edit. Once again, some of you are absurd, assuming the worst possible situation. It was not a dress with spaghetti straps that barely covered her ass. It has long sleeves and was the right length. Should it be reiterated, the bridesmaids wore form-fitting gowns. Many other guests were also in agreement. It wasn't a very typical event. No one took offense to our figures. And Ruby's clothing didn't stand out too much. Ruby really is quite pretty. She has always been, but I didn't previously consider that to be a problem for Anne. After being the best of friends for 25 years, during which they never lost touch or went through any changes in their relationship, Anne abruptly stopped speaking with Ruby. Rather than attempting to exert authority, my mother and I were concerned. We figured that if they had broken off communication overnight, something extremely awful had happened. Anne is usually an open book, so my mother was even more concerned when she refused to discuss it. Ruby and Anne are not more loved by me than they are by me. I am only this close to Ruby because Anne was once this close to Ruby. Since they were essentially inseparable, I grew up modeling myself after them both. Naturally, I adore Anne, but I feel like she's acting irrationally in this circumstance. Ruby had always planned to attend the wedding itself. I apologize for the poorly worded sentence. My mother suggested that Anne invite Ruby for wedding preparations such as dress buying, etc. If Dave, the groom, feels anything for Ruby, I don't know. They've met numerous times, and there have never been any indications that he does, so I've never considered that. I firmly believe that there is no affair going on, as my sister would not want to wed Dave, and Ruby would not want to attend the wedding at all. Ruby has never pursued Anne's crushes or relationships before. Update. I was going to tell Anne this morning how much she means to me and that I'm here for her, based on some of the advice I'm getting, but she's getting all angrier again, so I'm not trying. Dave requested if I could speak with Anne since it seems that he and Anne got into a heated argument when he attempted to stand up for Ruby on the wedding night. He wanted to know where he went wrong and how he might make it right with her. He's obviously at a loss for words because this is the first time he's ever asked for assistance with their relationship. I stated that he should try to have a conversation with Anne because I was equally perplexed and we didn't even know why she wasn't in the bridal party. It gets strange at this point. Anne refused to bend and insisted that it would be more equitable if Ruby was removed from both wedding parties. Dave explained that Ruby wasn't in either bridal party since he wanted her to be the best woman and Anne wanted her to be the maid of honor. He claimed that after explaining everything to Ruby, they got into a quarrel because Ruby wanted to be included. I immediately hung up after saying okay, but the more I consider it, the more perplexed I am. Ruby would probably remember if they had a major argument over Ruby being maid of honor, right? Furthermore, I fail to see why Dave would designate Ruby as his best woman given that, from what I hear, he only got to know her after he began dating Anne. I won't bring it up because I truly am taking your advice not to meddle to heart, which is a nightmare because my interest is now completely piqued. I have vowed not to press Anne anymore on it, even if it's likely that this is all I will ever know, and that it will bother me till I die. Update 2. I'm still not sure. About 30 minutes earlier, Dave gave me a call and asked, in a very irate tone of voice, if any of his groomsmen had treated me badly. He asked again after I asked what. Anne was shrieking something in the background as I could hear. I mentioned that they'd been such good gentlemen at the wedding and I hadn't heard from them since. Then he questioned if I thought Ruby realized she was destined to be the best woman. I replied that he would be better off asking her and Anne directly because they had both been quite private about their past interactions. Not to my understanding, but it was possible that I don't know. After chuckling, he hung up. Ruby texted me to inquire about the situation and whether I was aware of the Best Woman Maid of Honor event. I just received a message from one of the bridesmaids telling me not to take Dave's call if he calls. Anne is calling my dad and seems to be screaming. I have no idea what's going on, but I believe the truth of what truly happened is somewhere within this mess. Everything seems to be blowing up in my face. I now believe that the bridesmaids, or at least that specific one, are involved. And if things continue to go this quickly, I should ultimately figure out what the hell is going on. Update 3. I'm tired, but there has been a lot of crying and shouting today, so I'm providing the update since so many people asked for it. I'm still a little shocked. Almost everyone has been duped by Anne. The tale is lengthy and extremely intricate. I actually utilize this list to help me mentally get my brain around it. All of the information I have is listed chronologically. Dave used to be a drug addict and has served time in jail. He was severely struggling financially after his recovery, and Ruby gave him a lot of support before he even met Anne. She is one of his closest pals, in his opinion. After 2 years, Dave was considerably more steady and productive at work and was performing well. Ruby had introduced him to Anne at this point. Because of Dave's past, Anne was hesitant to get close to him, even though she felt strongly about him. They eventually started dating, but she told us they met through a dating service because she was still ashamed of the person he had been. At the time, Dave gave his consent to this. Dave informed Anne she needed to be honest with us about his past as he grew more at ease with himself, and as their relationship grew more committed. She promised to tell us, but she chose not to. She revealed to Dave that she had written a fake letter from my family expressing our gratitude and acceptance for his candor. She also told Ruby that my parents had responded quite adversely, so Ruby decided it was still a very delicate subject and never broached the subject with Dave or my family. Anne started getting nervous about the wedding after Dave proposed. Dave desired that Ruby, His best woman and other members of his support network attend in order to expose the lies. However, she still refused to reveal to us Dave's identity or the fact that she had lied to him, so she chose to keep lying rather than own up to her transgression. Thus, Anne, 1. pretended to be really distraught over not being able to have Ruby as her MOH in order to support her claim that she ought to be excluded from both wedding parties. She informed Dave that she had given Ruby the rundown on their choice, and that Ruby had taken offense in order to appease him. She really understood that if Ruby found out that she was destined to be best woman, it would quickly come back to her and my mother, leading us to question Ruby's connection with Dave. As a result, she withheld all information from Ruby, leaving Ruby perplexed and unable to come up with a solution. 2. Told Dave and every friend he had in his support group not to bring up the addiction in speeches or even in everyday conversation because prior to the wedding, some family members found it to be a sensitive topic. 3. Spoke so many lies about Ruby to the bridesmaids. She admitted to them that she was prone to making trouble, that she would try to have sex with one of the groomsmen, her ex, who had abandoned her, and that she would become inebriated. In essence, she portrayed Ruby as a disaster waiting to happen in order to make the bridesmaids dislike her and prevent her from being around certain guests at the wedding, particularly those who also knew Dave. 4. In order to prevent the bridesmaids from repeating any of the lies Ruby told me, Anne also revealed to them that the only reason Ruby was invited was because I adore her. Anne had her massive outburst about the outfit after the wedding. Since the bridesmaids were clearly not in favor of Ruby, it was simple to persuade them that it was intended as a sincere snub. Since Anne was the bride, my dad caved right away, as it seemed she expected everyone to do. Had my mother and I followed suit, Anne would have essentially used it as a pretext to remove Ruby from everyone's lives. She attempted to do the same with Dave's groomsmen, telling him they had spoken improperly about the bridesmaids. In order to prevent it from coming up again, the plan was to essentially exclude everyone who knew the truth about Dave from the broader social circle. Dave smelled something fishy. He inquired as to the precise nature of Ruby's dress malfunction and the specific remarks made by his buddies. A heated quarrel resulted from Anne's terrified accusations that he didn't love her and had chosen his buddies over her, among other things. In an attempt to ascertain what had happened, Dave began calling people because he was furious and suspicious. A few of the bridesmaids stated that Anne was being honest with them about the guys because she had asked or coerced them to, but the majority seemed a little uncomfortable by the request, and I believe they were able to convey that to Dave. To find out if I knew what was going on, he called. Although I wasn't present when it happened and Anne said that I shared his concern for Ruby more than she did, the timeliness of the tale didn't line up, so Dave phoned me nevertheless. The strange phone call was that one. He questioned her directly what was going on because he could tell at this point that she was babbling. She sobbed and confided in Dave everything. He was furious. After informing us all via text about his past, he essentially expelled Anne. She came to us, and then had to go over everything once again. Anne is completely distraught. She has never done anything like this before, and I never thought she was capable of this level of deceit and manipulation. I don't hate my sister, unlike what some posters seem to think. Even though what she did truly hurts me, I feel bad for her because she's scared that she and Dave won't be able to work things out, which makes her feel very terrible and miserable. She is so angry that our mother won't even look at her that she has gone to bed. I can certainly see where she's coming from, but she's furious that Anne would lie to her and harm so many other people in this way. My dad is likewise astonished and offended. Ruby received an SMS from Anne. She apologized and explained in a message to Ruby, but it's clear that Ruby is offended and furious. She just said that she was unable to speak with her at this time and that she might give her a call in the morning once they had both had some time to cool off. I can understand why Dave is perhaps the most hurt of all of us. Although he wouldn't talk to Anne, he did tell me that he truly believed he had our acceptance, and that the letter she had given him had been his most prized item ever. It broke his heart to learn that the letter was a lie. I informed him that no one held him responsible and that we did accept him for who he was, but I don't think it made much of a difference. I can see why he has begged to be removed from our family. After this, I'm not sure if he wants to be Anne's husband or when he'll be willing to talk to her again. If he finds someone else later on, I wouldn't hold it against him. Update 4. It has been a very difficult 2 weeks. For the most part, Anne and my mother have been fighting and sobbing. We discovered that Anne's dishonesty was not unexpected. She's been fixated on her image for a very long time. She opened up about a number of things from her work and secondary school. A portion of it was unsettling, but other parts were quite frightening and deceptive. I feel like I've lost so much of her identity. She's my sister, so it hurts me too, but there's a tension between us that I don't think will ever go away. My father concluded that Anne needed to see a therapist after learning about some of the revelations. Anne battled mightily against the choice, which resulted in a heated altercation with my father. My dad and I have never witnessed such anger, which is probably why she finally gave in. In addition to assisting Anne in coping with her feelings in the wake of everything that has occurred, the therapist should be able to identify the underlying cause of her issues. Many of the remarks implied that the way our family interacts with one another is unhealthy. I'm torn about this because while my mother and I were correct that something was seriously wrong, that doesn't mean that our poor behavior was excused, if that makes any sense. I therefore recommended family counseling. My parents are investigating it. Perhaps by doing so, we can all gain a better understanding of limits in one another and ultimately get past this. Anne and Ruby have been communicating a lot. Ruby seems to still be in a lot of pain, but I've been following the advice to stay out of their relationship, and I'm leaving them alone. Ruby and I still talk a lot, but we don't talk about Anne. I believe that Dave's message from 2 days ago has tragically put an end to this awful circumstance. He doesn't think he wants to be married to Anne at all after finding out that this is a pattern of behavior, because he believes that she has not only badly harmed him, but also misled him about who she is. He has a solid support system around him since, as Ruby has told me, he has confided in friends about what happened and is receiving therapy as well. Other than that, I'm not getting connected with him since I believe he deserves to be apart from my family after everything, but it does help to know he's all right. This news has not gone well with Anne. I believe she experienced a panic episode when she first received the message since she was crying, trembling, and breathing rapidly. She is enraged with Ruby for telling Dave about her history because she knows that Ruby told him. She is just as obsessed with the idea of becoming someone divorced as she is with Dave's impending departure. She's just not well. So even though I'm not taking it as personally as my mother, I do feel bad for not recognizing this sooner. I sincerely hope that the therapist can help her get better. Relevant comments. Commentator. What incident in your sister's past infuriated Dave enough to make him upset with Rudy for informing him? There was a lot we found out that Ruby could have informed him, but I'm not sure what specifically convinced him to make that decision. Maybe everything taken together. Because of the word count, I removed it from the original text. Anne chose her pals based on who she should be friends with. In order to connect with the appropriate people, she fabricated her interests, which wasn't too unnerving as I believe that many individuals do it to some degree. To make herself seem like the best friend and get rid of other people, she would also fabricate rumors to remove different people from friendship groups and frequently cause difficulty in her own, in a way that would make it difficult to link her to the incident. She took into account several aspects such as their weight, hobbies, relationships with their significant others, and occasionally the sheer number of people in the group. If she thought her circle was too large, she had to cut someone out. Her intention was to suit her image by performing poorly on tests. For example, she knew she wasn't strong at chemistry, so she purposefully answered certain questions incorrectly to avoid receiving a grade lower than a C. For teachers, Anne purposefully created obstacles in her path that she wouldn't have if everything had been right. I apologize for making this explanation so difficult to understand, but essentially she spends a lot of her time trying to create an ideal world or right situations. Thus, if a teacher didn't fit in, she would purposefully encourage other students to have terrible lives, etc., all the while maintaining the appearance of being an excellent student. She detested teachers as well, believing that they held a different view of her than she did. These are professors that I know left, at least 2 of them. One of them was dismissed. Over the years, she has also forced many of the people who work for her to quit and made their lives at the company horrible. She made them look foolish and inept by spreading gossip about them and giving them bad instructions. She would play small, unpleasant games with their heads, like taking their supplies and occasionally even switching them out. Anne's falsehoods have mostly shaped who she is. Even though we now know that the things she claimed others had done to her were lies, we believe that she is really affected emotionally by them and feels harmed by them. Her obsessive pursuits of invented interests continue to be her pastimes to this day. Her lies and what's right have guided her in making important life decisions. That's really the sum of what we know, while there are many small, discrete stories that she told us, or that we are starting to piece together.